We got the Stalk team here with us. John Kelly, you've seen him here a few times before, and Frank Adamson.
I'll tell you, probably inside of him, he's walking around like a dead man. Dead inside. I'm focused on what this guy's motive was. I'm leaning more towards a sexual motive at this point. Some of the information I've gotten is, this guy was really trying to do research and pick up some different ideas. And of course, he's innocent until proven guilty. I have to say that. I mean, and it's just the law, it's just the way it is. But he was doing research with other people that have other convicts that have gotten out of jail and want to turn their lives around, which I think is pretty darn sad. So then he was turning around and he was getting information out of them. He was running some kind of research
Yes.
situation and trying to get information on how they did this or how they did that. And it seemed to be there was an emphasis on how they got away with crimes. And I think he was concerned on how they got away with crimes. So that's something that really has me concerned because and I've also heard he was a heroin addict. Heroin is a very strong central nervous system depressant. It's really a sedative. That's why I even mentioned you'll very rarely find an active sexual killer that is on heroin, because heroin, again, is a central nervous system depressant, where these guys are really into stimulation. Sex is stimulating. So that kind of leads you to believe their drug of choice is going to be like cocaine or meth, some kind of central nervous system stimulant, not a central nervous system depressant. However, this is important, that this guy stopped doing heroin. He stopped doing heroin, and then he, was off and running, and really was pretty much focused on, if you think about it, the darkness. I mean, he was focused, on he had given up the heroin, and he's focused on how to get over, how to still continue that antisocial behavior, how to manipulate people, how to take advantage of people. I mean, he was really focused on the forbidden. He was really focused on the forbidden. I mean, until we can really truly unpack all of this, and we'll point it out, and we will point out the different dynamics, the different steps he took, to end up in this place, because this is extremely rare, okay, to see. And especially if we have a mass murderer here who got involved in a mass murder because of him being a sexual predator and having a sexual addiction. This happens when people give up, drug addiction and end up picking up another addiction like gambling or sex. Okay. However, they don't become serial killers or mass murderers. So ask away. We'll try and answer your questions.
All right, I was just putting this on the screen, which shows his research as well that he was doing, which is quite interesting, studying criminal justice and then running his own research here. Were you employed? Yes or no? Were you under the influence of drugs or alcohol? Yes or no? These are his questions he made up. Uh, were you experiencing any issues with your family? Were you affiliated with a gang? Was this your first offense? Did you struggle or fight with a victim? I mean, wow, the things that he was asking, even these, he
Yeah,
wanted
and
to know.
he wasn't running a research program as much as he was running a scam. You know what I mean? This guy was this guy was scheming all along. And yeah, this is a pretty bizarre case. This is going to go down in the annals of criminal history, I think.
Yep. Yeah, I think so. It's one of those that's like we won't forget, just like the Green River Killer and Ted Bundy. This is one, again, sorry for the fireworks, guys, but this is one for the history books. It's unbelievable what he did. Frank, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, my thoughts are first when I thought about this killing before, or these killings before I have learned what we now know, is that that this was a mass murder and similar to the Richard Speck murder years ago of nurses, and that he may not go out and kill someone again. I mean, but and I thought that that the crime scenes were was rather disorganized, and that this guy was partially organized. He planned it, but he did it inside. He murdered or butchered with a knife, and that often leaves evidence. So I thought that he wasn't as organized as indeed I now believe the killer was. One of the things that a defense attorney told me years ago when I was in charge of Green River, and also this defense attorney had been a King County prosecutor before that, was that once you have a suspect, you lose your objectivity. So you have to be really careful about thinking about a person once you're zeroing in on that person. What you want to look for is not why he did it, but what points out what reasons he might not have done it, to keep your objectivity going correctly. So I thought about that over the years, and then I began to think about this case, and I began to think about some of the literature that I'd read years and years ago, and I thought of Dostoevsky, and again when I thought about him in Crime and Punishment and Notes from the Underground, a couple of his writings, I thought, if indeed this person is the killer, he reminds me of a character right out of one of these books. I mean, this is well planned, and not only is it well planned, he's doing things with his mind. He's thinking about, he's asking questions, he's asking other criminals, you've committed a crime. What do you feel about that? What did you do right? What did you do wrong? This
Exactly.
is the person that we're dealing with here. And then I got to thinking about the complications. When I took over Green River, we had 10,000 tip sheets on suspects, and that was just a mammoth task. And then I thought of the Idaho Police Department, and they have 20,000 tip sheets and probably more information by this time, and what they had to do to deal with that and follow up and find this person, if indeed he is the person. And then I thought of the miracle of DNA. Again, back in the early part of the Green River investigation, DNA was not a factor. Ultimately, DNA solved that case 20 years later. So I think of the progress of criminal investigations over the years. The other thing that I thought about is coming from Washington and coming from Spokane and thinking about, the Pullman, the Washington State University, and thinking about the college in Moscow, 8 miles away. And I was thinking, my sister went to Pullman and graduated from there, and my brother went to Idaho. And then I thought, these two schools aren't that far apart. I also thought about, the fact that WSU has an excellent criminology program. And, before we knew who the suspect was here, then I started thinking about, okay, if this guy did it, what about Bundy? He was going to law school. In fact, I attended 1 year of law school too, the same year that Bundy was there at the same school.
Oh my gosh.
So, I just think about coincidences and how things happen and how things are solved. And I think one of the things that the police did so well in this case was that they reached out for information early on, and that information started coming in. And again, I'm very appreciative of what they have done. Also, I began to think about this case, and in the early part, I thought, this is a mass murder. Like I said, it's a retrospect type, but now I've changed my mind, and I think, this is more like the Ken Bianchi case, and in the Bianchi case, he was a wannabe cop, and it sounds like this person was also maybe a wannabe cop, and that's not that unusual sometimes in serial killings and,
Yes.
and the backgrounds of the killers. So these are the thoughts that run through my mind at this point.
Spot on. I mean, he was a casual security guard. So
Right.
he was in security and, studying criminal justice. So yeah, he probably is a wannabe police officer. And I'm sure he was following this case like a hawk. Wow, as it happened, as it unfolded. Apparently he went back to class and finished his semester after the killings. He just went about his normal studies as if nothing had happened. Of course, he needs to do that. But yeah, very interesting as well.
Right, he needs to.
Yes. Okay, let me just put this on here again. So this says, Steve Goncalves said no one in the family knows or recognizes the suspect, but in the hours since they first learned his name, they are starting to see connections between him and Kaylee Goncalves that they aren't ready to discuss yet. Now that there's a person and a name that someone can specifically look for and see if there's any connections in any way. So they're just trying to figure it out, the family attorney Shannon Gray told ABC News. So do you think, either of you can answer, do you think that this suspect knew the victims? No, I know, John, when you were on the show, we had speculated before he could have been a peeping Tom, a voyeur,
Yes.
watching them, starting online, and then maybe even going there and practicing. Do you think he would have done practice runs to the house and watched them and gotten to know the house, or all online, or that he would have known the victims, or is he a complete stranger, in your opinion?
All the above except a complete stranger, like Frank said. Frank said he believed that this was really planned out by this guy pretty well. I agree with that too. Now, the other part of that is that in order to do that, first of all, he had to know the victim. Okay, I believe he had to know the victim, especially if Kaylee was targeted. He would have had to known her, known where she lived. He would have stalked her on the internet. And what I mean by that is he would have been a voyeur or peeping Tom on the internet, trying to see as much of her as he could possibly see. He would have probably shown up sooner or later at that house because, like Frank said, he would have had to have known, a little bit about the house, a little bit about the property, how he's going to enter, how he's going to get away, how he's going to make his escape. You can see just in the very fact, just with the very fact that he really went back to class after he slaughters 4 people, stabs them all up, goes back to class the next day like nothing ever happened. Okay, that's all intentional. That's all for him to show that nothing has changed in his system, nothing has changed in his life. He has class, he's showing up for class, so nothing remarkable happened in his life. But I am waiting to see and would bet money that he somehow online or in person came across Kaylee and she rejected him in some way, or he felt rejected in some way, and that just caused him to become angry and angrier, or he just was so attracted and so overwhelmed with her beauty and her looks that he wanted to possess her. He wanted to control her. He wanted to dominate her, physically, sexually, and even if it meant he had to kill 3 other people in order to achieve this, that's where his focus was. This guy was paying attention to Kaylee. I truly believe that, especially if the father's mentioning they've already found some kind of, connection between him and her. No matter what it is, because
Yes.
these guys, can really, we talked about the other day, can really become obsessed, okay, with having control and physical dominance over a woman.
Yes, and the top question I get is why do you think he spared the other 2 roommates and the dog, in your
That
opinion?
is an excellent question, Frank. Why do you think he didn't kill the other 2 roommates or the dog?
Well, before I answer that, let me go back to something that I want to say about the initial approach here. Often these serial killers are out in their car and driving around, and they put on a tremendous amount of miles on their car. And I think it's significant that the police came up with a vehicle in this case, and they pursued that. And I when you look at the cul-de-sac where this took place, initially I thought, the killer probably visited someone in one of these apartments nearby, or he was at this house at some time before he went in. There's no doubt in my mind that he surveilled this area, and he came back several times to case it out. He might have been in the house. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he wasn't in the house. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he knew one of the victims. Now, you can know a victim, and they may not know you. In the Bundy case, picking out women at the University of Washington and going into their apartments. I mean, he went to school there, and the knowledge was he saw this pretty girl and he followed her home, and at some point he went into their houses, and in his early crimes. So all of those factors, I think, are important. Getting back to why he didn't kill the people below. Again, part of it. This was a house that was built in 2 stages. Okay, one. When I was a child, my uncle had a farm, and he had a new house and an old house, and they were joined together. You couldn't hear anything from the old house into the new house, even though they were connected. So you'd have to know about the acoustics of this house, and that's only the police would know that, or the people that have been inside that house. Maybe the people downstairs couldn't even hear. And if they could, maybe he wanted to get away. It's hard to believe that he committed these acts without someone hearing something. But again, you have to be in that house to find out whether that really occurred. um, uh, he may have his objective may have been, simply one of the individuals upstairs. Period. Um, and he didn't need to go downstairs, and he needed to get out of there quickly. All of those reasons may factor into why he didn't go downstairs and kill those other two people. The other thing that kind of I wonder was, did he act alone? Um, how do you contain four people? Although it's late at night and maybe they were asleep when he made the
Yes.
attack. How do you accomplish that? He had to be very sure of himself. Again, you think of, the psychology of this person. He has an aggrandized sense of self to even want to take on, four people, let alone six people. So, all of those are factors. And the fact is that we really don't know. The police have the best sense of what happened there because they were in that building. They've talked to people that know about that building, and that they'll have some sense of how this killer could have accomplished that act in that house.
Yes. Yes. They were saying as well that the bottom floor, as you said, was built in 2 stages. The ceiling, let's say, of the bottom floor was concrete, and the ones in the middle floor was supposedly wood. So that makes sense as well, that it's more sound insulated at the bottom. Before I forget, I just don't want to forget this one pin thing, which you might find interesting. If you type in Moscow, Idaho vegan restaurants, because we know, according to his aunt, I believe, people sharing things that they know about him, that he was quite a radical vegan, and to the point where he asked his parents to buy new pots and pans and things because he didn't want to use pots and pans that had been used to cook meat. But if you type in Moscow, Idaho vegan restaurants, well, the first one that comes up is the Mad Greek restaurant, and 2 out of the victims worked there, Maddie and Xana.
Interesting. Very interesting.
And that's a close drive for him, 10 to 15 minutes and he's there. So if he was looking at vegan restaurants, even just in his area and Moscow, Idaho, even that could be quite a connection.
Absolutely. That's where he could have seen her for the first time even.
Yep. The dog. Why do you think he spared the dog? Do you think, and second question, do you think he's involved in those animal, the dog skinnings and all of that to practice? And is that why he spared this dog, to make it look different? Or why do you think he spared the dog?
I don't know if he really even got near the dog or how that happened with the dog, because we're not sure where the dog was found, correct? I mean,
We don't know exactly, just in a room where the crimes did not occur.
if the dog was segregated and put in another room, separated and put in another room, I mean, then that would be a very good question. We don't know if they put the dog in the room, Kaylee or Maddie or any of the other folks put the dog in that particular room at night or whatever, or if he did. I have a hard time with this guy going out of his way and spending any time chasing the dog, while he's got this other business on his mind, this business of murder. Okay, he's got murder on his mind and his mind on murder. All right. So where did he go with the dog? I don't know. If the dog just came up to him and it was easy, or he was there earlier and he could just slip the dog in the room, come in here, boy, give him a little food or whatever, get him in that room, get him out of the way. That would be fine. That would be fine. But usually these guys, I don't see any care or compassion for the dog, although he may have felt if folks came home and didn't see the dog, they would be alarmed. So that means he couldn't have been there earlier and put the dog away earlier, because then the folks would have came home, or the other kids would have come home and said, well, where's the dog, right? So I think it's after the fact. He didn't want to spend the time chasing the dog, or else the dog was outside. After he did the deed and used up all that strength and adrenaline do these murders. I think he just wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. That's what I'm thinking. I really don't have an answer, complete answer for the dog. Frank, do you have any idea about why he didn't kill the dog, or why he put the dog away, or do you think he didn't even see the dog either?
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. He might have the dog might have even known him from a previous visit. You know, he might have you know enticed the dog with food. You know that sometimes works, but um, there's just and there's just no way to really know um, why he didn't attack the dog. I do think that uh, adds complications if he tried. Again, I don't totally understand, um, you know, other than his obsession using a knife because when you start cutting things, you can cut yourself and you can leave DNA. And this guy's pretty methodical. He had to be thinking about that stuff. He had to know about that stuff about DNA. He had to know about um, the potential of leaving evidence and crime being solved. I think he wants to stay away from the dog if possible. And that's all I can say about that.
We just had a couple of people come across with a really good answer. The guy was a vegan. The guy was a vegan. He didn't believe in hurting animals. So maybe in his twisted mind, he's not going to hurt an animal. He's going to kill. He's not going to hurt an animal, but he's going to kill a human being. So I mean, it could be as simple as that. Bizarre as it may sound.
His one sister worked in the mental health field, and he's got no criminal charges before this. So a lot of people ask me to ask you guys, do you think we asked this in the Delphi case too? Do you think he has offended before but not been caught?
We don't know if he has a juvenile record, and we'll probably never know that. So that's one possibility. Um, the another possibility is that he has done other kinds of things that are cruel, but not this cruel. Um, you know, he may have assaulted people, and maybe he's never been arrested for doing that. I mean, in the case of Gary Ridgway, he tried to murder a young kid when he was a young kid, and 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 the kid almost died. He was much younger than Ridgway. Ridgway was 14, and the kid was like 8, and he stabbed him, and it's never reported to the police. So, there's all kinds of things in a person's background. You got to look at the personality of this person, find out, does he have a record of a violent past? It doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to have been arrested for it. A lot of people get in fights when they're young people or pick on other people. Um, what is this guy's um, you know position? I think he stalked this person or these people before. I think he knew absolutely what he was getting into. Um, and again, I think it goes back to, you know, what was he thinking and what was he investigating? He wanted to know the mindset of people that are committing crimes. You know, he wanted to understand that. Um, maybe so that he wouldn't get himself caught when he went in there.
He had to scope them out. I believe he had to scope them out because you know why? How did he know they were not going home for Thanksgiving holiday? He had to scope them out. If he's that organized and he's making that kind of a move, he has to be sure that at least Kaylee's going to be there. How does he know that unless he's stalking her and scoping around on the internet and following?
Yes. And I mean, she did talk about a potential stalker, and then law enforcement said they looked about the two men that may have followed her in a business, but he could literally be the stalker that she was talking about. We don't know that either. Maybe she kept on seeing, whoa, I think someone's following me. I think there's a car following me. It could be that'll be quite something if he turns out to be the stalker. I don't know how we'll know, but very interesting. And also, did you notice that with all the, I don't know if you've seen all the interviews of the friends, former friends talking and everything, but there's not one account of him having a romantic relationship. There's no girlfriend, boyfriend, no partner. So I'm not saying he's an incel. I'm just saying there doesn't seem to be any stories of that.
But I think he went from like zero self-esteem to starting to have some self-esteem and confidence as he started to achieve and get into this field, because him being on the streets or being involved in the heroin culture, I mean, he had he had a good education on how to be a criminal.
Yeah, I think it's complex. The fact that he was studying criminal justice doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to progress to doing something. We really don't know what the tipping point is when it comes to serial killers. You know, Usually something in their childhood is indicative that they're having problems, and as they go along in life, um, sometimes something triggers it. In the Ted Bundy case, he claims, whether it's true or not, who knows, that or it's claimed when his one girlfriend broke up with him that may have been the tipping point. Although Bob Keppel believed that he started killing before that. In the case of Ridgway, um, the tipping point really came when he tried to kill the young kid when he was 14. He wanted to see what it was like to kill somebody. So and they may have an interest in mysteries. They may have an interest in pornography. They may have an interest in killing, and that may guide what they do as they go along in life. Um, the one thing that um, if indeed this person is the killer, the one thing that being involved in a criminal justice program, it gives you a lot of insight. Being a police officer, for example, or a security guard, gives you opportunity. There's all kinds of reasons why um, someone may, project a certain path, and that may eventually lead um, to murder. What was the tipping point in this person's life? I don't know. Um, but obviously he had all that built up anger over the years, and it apparently started fairly early, as you guys pointed out, with poems of the parents and the sister, or they there was that dysfunction in his life early on. And why did he go on to be a killer if he did? Well, we really can't answer that question.
Yeah, I think he wants to expedite his extradition because of all the shame and blame and whatever else may happen to his family members where he lives. So, I don't have any family really out in Idaho. My family's in Pennsylvania. So the longer I hang around Pennsylvania, the more news there's going to be on me in this particular area of Pennsylvania. Let me get the hell out of here. Let me go where I don't have any family, and let me just get it over and done. Let's get out of here and get these cameras and this media and everything from outside my family's house, and let me get on down the road to Idaho where they're going to secure me. That's my thinking. Frank, why do you think he wants a quick extradition?
Well, I just think that it's inevitable that he's going to end up um, in Idaho anyway. So why not get along with it? I mean, just prolong it. Um, and if he's not the killer, you know, then maybe he wants to, try to prove his innocence.
Yep, I think it could also be like a control issue, right? If just like, no, I'm taking control here. I
Good
decide I
point.
want to go really quick now. He's calling the shots, according to him.
Excellent point.
Uh, these people have big egos. A little bit ago they had a picture of John Wayne Gacy. The other thing is, and when I think of Bundy and even Ridgway, they can be so personable at times that you don't know. I mean, you have no concept that they're that they have thoughts of killing, and that's the other thing. Even when he went to that house on that day, were the doors open? Did they not lock him, or did he just knock and say, I need to come in for some reason, and was he able to just walk in the house? Again, you think about Bundy picking up people, vulnerable people, and how in some ways it was so easy for him to do that, and it's so unfortunate. I mean, and in other cases, I think sometimes that sixth sense comes up, and people in the Bundy case, they realize that there was something wrong, and they didn't go with him. But apparently in this case, however he got in that house, he was able to do it very efficiently and without, creating a problem for himself before he got in there. Again, was he fortified? What happened? Yeah, we don't know.
Something I'd just like to bring out too, while we're covering over that, these guys, you have to understand, are master manipulators, which Frank knows all very well. We know this very well. And, we call them, the evil chameleons. I mean, they know when to turn on the charm. They know when to turn on the rage. They know when to kill. Okay. They're evil chameleons. They're out there. They walk among us. And you have to understand that, they know how to maneuver around society. I mean, they just know how to do it. They know how to turn on the charm, and they know when to turn the charm off. The other thing I want to bring out is about the alcohol. Many heroin addicts, like I said earlier, who are into heroin, which is a central nervous system depressant, right? And we usually say the central nervous system depressant addicts, really end up getting into alcohol. So I'm wondering if this guy was drinking a lot more, was much more involved with alcohol, because that would not surprise me at all, because alcohol is not as strong as a central nervous system depressant as heroin, but alcohol is a central nervous system depressant. And if you drink enough of it, I mean, you're going to be sedated, you're going to be intoxicated, and you could have unbelievable amount of rage on alcohol as well. So those are good questions. Those are all good questions.
Yes, and everybody asks, why do you think there was no blood trail? It didn't seem like there was a messy, not that we know, we saw the snow quite quickly after the crimes, but there was no blood trail from what we could see with our eye, with the drone footage and everything. Any thoughts on that?
I think Frank should take that. I don't have a thought on it. Frank's seen a lot of crime scenes. I have not. What do you say, Frank?
I just can't, it's hard for me to believe that if you stab people with knives, there's not going to be some blood. you know. But it's possible that the clothing soaked it up. You know, there's other things that we might not see. I mean, the problem is not being able to get in there and see what that scene. You know, obviously, the DNA came from somewhere. It might have come from blood. It might have come from semen. It might have come from a lot of other kinds of things. You know, but you know, I just have to believe that and maybe he cleaned it up. You know, that's the other thing.
Yep.
You know, he could have had materials with him. You know, as organized as he seems to be, that he might have cleaned it up.
Wow. Yes.
At least washed up somehow there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And also the DNA could have come from the victims that have defense wounds, maybe scratching, maybe under their fingernails. That's going to be really hard to avoid that. Maybe didn't anticipate that. Show you this, where they actually said PhD student arrested over Idaho quadruple slaying studied under famed forensic psychologist who authored 68 books, including How to Catch a Killer and The Mind of a Murderer, Dr. Catherine Ramsland. He studied, he took her courses. He was definitely preparing for something, it seems, for quite some time.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this was not going to be, I don't know if it was the first, but I'll tell you, it wasn't going to be the last. Do you think that after he killed these people in the house, that he would have killed again in, you know, over a certain period of time, like one year or bowling?
Yeah. I've definitely come to the conclusion that he probably would have killed again. And so, you know, you never know what the cooling off period is, but that's why he reminds me more of a serial killer than a mass murderer.
Yes.
And but I think if you know, the planning, the thought, the execution of this murder, these murders, indicate to me that, yeah, he's going to have a cooling off period, which we don't know how long that's going to be, but he's going to kill again. So I think, you know, like in the Bundy case, you know, he killed a lot of people that we don't even know about. And it depended on circumstances, and that often does, why someone has why the cooling period might last longer. When Ridgway was, when he was married and not single, he killed less frequently, but he still continued to kill. And I believe this killer would have continued to kill.
You know what's striking to me now that I think about it? He was going for a training and getting a doctorate in murder. All right, his plans were to get a doctorate on how to kill people and get away with it. He was going for a doctorate in murder and figuring if he's guilty. I mean, he may not even be guilty. My God, I mean, this guy may be innocent, but to me, it looks like where it's headed here. You know, he was going and in training to have a doctorate in getting away with murder.
You know, the other thing here, John, is that, you know, serial killers don't want to get caught. And so that also may be a reason for not continuing. You know, you think you think of the BTK killer, bind, torture, and kill. You know, he stopped killing for quite a period of time. There have been some killers, you know, like the Boston Strangler, who stopped his murders. You might say that in a psychological sense, there have been some people that grow out of that obsession, but it doesn't happen very frequently.
Scary.
You know what I find interesting, just to put out there, that we talked about him showing up at college the next day after the murders, going through his coursework, doing whatever that called for, right? Kept his routine and everything. And then where he really, really messed up was he broke the golden rule. As trained as he thought he was, he took flight. He broke the golden rule. Because as soon as he took off, right? As soon as he took off, man, they're laser focused on him. And you show up one day because you don't want to break the routine and you want to look like, greatest student ever, and you wouldn't harm anybody. And you're out there trying to protect the public by taking all these criminology courses. And, you're going to be out there for the good of mankind and for law enforcement. And then in the same tone, bang, let me get out of here. They're going to get me. Like Frank said, they don't want to get caught, and flight, which he should have learned in criminology 101, flight is a warning sign or can be a sign of guilt. And sure enough, man, as soon as that guy took off, I mean, forget about it. I think they may have been tipped on him too. I will see about the genealogy and all, but I mean, this guy booked out of there pretty quickly. The reason too that the police went in at 3:00 in the morning, the SWAT team went in to arrest him, is because I'm sure they felt he was going to be off guard, just like he felt that his victims were going to be off guard at 3:00 in the morning. Now, if you remember, if you go back and you look at one of the first shows we did, I said when they come for this guy, they're probably going to be coming for him in the night. They're going to want to come for him in the night when he's sleeping. I don't know if you remember that or not.
I do.
But what I see, I feel he was watching us. He was tuned into Grizzly at the time because these guys always watched, always tune in, right? So I thought to myself, okay, well, I'm going to throw this out there anyway. They will probably do it, but I want him to know they're doing it. So that way he's not on his toes. He's not ready to roll because we have a killer. We don't know who he is. We know he's on the loose. We know he's not in custody. We know he's probably listening to Grizzly, right? So we want to send him a message and let him know they're probably going to come for him in the middle of the night. And you know what I'm hoping to do? I'm hoping to just twist him a little bit and sleep deprive him of his sleep so he's more anxious at night, can't sleep right, and it's going to take him off his game a little bit. You know what I mean? Keep him on his toes. So I'm glad they came in the middle of the night and got him.
Yes, great. And you did say they're going to get him. He's going to be in a cage. Now he's in a cage. We're going to wrap it up any minute now. I just want to make sure I plug your books. Is this the book you wanted me to show, Discovering Lazarus?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, and you have another one as well, Warning Signs, a guidebook for parents, how to read the early signals of low self-esteem, addiction, and hidden violence in your kids. So 2 books I will link below for you guys, and I'm going to timestamp everything, so don't worry about that. But if you want to pick this up as well, Discovering Lazarus, remember to leave some ratings. I see there's no new ratings, and I know you guys are buying the book, so I hope you're reading it and enjoying it, and then leave a rating or review. Either one of those.
Thank
and
you
then the
all
website.
so much. Thank you all so much.
And the website is johnkelleyllc.com. So you can read all about John Kelly here. And here's the Stalk Incorporated team. We've got Frank Adamson with us today from the Stalk Incorporated team. Solving murders is our business, is what they say.
And Dr. Murphy will be on next time.
Yes. Yeah, we were supposed to have the whole team here today, you guys. But unfortunately, there were some technical issues before. And sorry about whatever chirping sound or feedback or whatever there is. We tried our very best to sort that out. But I hope you guys enjoyed the show today. They say in cold blood fantasy, possibly. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I couldn't get to all your questions. I really appreciate all you guys. Please ask some more in the comments below. I can always pass those along as well. Any closing words from you, Frank?
I just hope that the victims' families are able to survive this long term. it never goes away. A loss is tremendous, and it's there for your life, but you have to go on living and be happy that you had those wonderful people for the period that you did have them.
Yes, that's great. I mean, it's such a tragedy. I really hope as well that they can heal and move on from this. And if they are watching, if there's any family watching, you have our full Grizzly support. This community definitely welcomes you, and you have our full support. And any closing words from you, John?
Yes, they have our full support and love, and we're glad that there was an apprehension here, and hopefully we'll see what happens at trial. If he's guilty, then he needs to pay the price. But my message is, we have to keep a focus on child abuse. And, I mean, we're hearing about him being bullied as a child and then all this anger he built up and everything. How much this plays a role, I don't know. Certainly not excuse. Really not excuse, because the vast majority of people that get abused as children don't become killers, but yet we know that a lot of killers have been abused as children. So it's like looking back and forth. So I would just hope that people keep an eye on their children and show love, respect, and value to their children. And we want to stop this epidemic of child abuse, and we need to stop this epidemic of drug addiction. So that's my 2 cents. And thank you so much, as always, for having us on.
Yes, thank you. And you're always welcome here on Grizzly True Crime. As you know, we love your expertise and insights. The audience absolutely loved it. Viewer retention was great. And thank you for being here. I'm going to play my little Happy New Year thing for everyone now, and then the outro. And if you guys want to hang back, we can debrief after if you want to. Thank you so much, Mods. I know today was very, very hard. There was a lot of people here again. I wish everybody here in the Grizzly community and beyond a very happy new year. I'll see you next year. Lots of plans, lots of content, and we're very happy to end this year with that dude in a cage.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Bye, everyone.